Super. So look, I think we'll kick off there. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here this morning for this session on change management. I'm really looking forward to this myself. Delighted you could all join us. My own name is Annie Fitzgibbon. I'm Director of Member Services with Cork Chamber. I know some of you online here this morning, and welcome to everyone else who I maybe haven't met previously. We're delighted to have Amanda Finnegan here this morning, Head of Retained Services with Adair Trusted People Partners, who are Cork Chamber's HR partner. A lot of you will be aware of that. So they run regular webinars such as this around current topics, around latest legislation, etc. Adair would facilitate our HR leaders group, which some of you might be aware of, and have colleagues involved in. And Amanda is also regularly in Cork and is available to head out and about and meet with our members for consultations as needed with regard to all your HR requirements and questions that you might have and queries. She can assist with that. So just really quickly, some housekeeping. This is our first webinar, I think, from our Adair series this year. So it's a reminder that we will keep microphones off, but there's plenty of time at the end for Q&A. So do feel free to share your questions and we'll pick them up at the end. And we are just recording this session just for our files, but it won't be shared anywhere, but just to make you aware. And there'll be a few polls along the way. So look, we're looking forward to your engagement and your interaction with us. So look, we won't delay. I'm going to hand you straight over to Amanda to kick off the session and we'll chat to you in a little while. Thanks so much. Over to you, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Annie. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We're delighted to be able to actually just be a reminder or a catalyst of things that you would have already experienced in the past, might have forgotten that it's something that you wanted to do, and I'm hoping that this session today will help you. We call it Insights Applied Provides Progress. So if we understand something differently, moving forward, doing it differently actually just helps us to progress. So thank you, Annie, for the great introduction. Yes, as Adair, we are employment laws, industrial relations, health and safety experts with really good human resource management practice and expertise. And we're available if you need any assistance with any of those elements, we're right there for you. Again, my name is Amanda, and I'm really excited about the topic today because it's something that is real. It happens out there, whether we like it or not. Pertikaes in 530 BC said change is the only constant. And if we think about that that's thousands of years ago, it feels like. Just saying this is something that we go through every single day. So we were hoping that we could just pause for a moment, take stock, what's happening out there. And just realizing that whether we think it's out there, it's actually happening to our organizations, and how does that work for us? What are some of the key things that we could be making use of so that we can know and manage change in a better way in our organization? I'm going to pause and really simplify, kind of going granularly. If it's happening at an individual or a team or a company space, what are some of the things that we've got to consider to make this practical and workable for us? That it's to our benefit and not to our detriment, that it drives growth and that doesn't hamper it. And then at the end, I hope that there'll be some really good takeaways for you guys on a practical level. Like, what are some of the things that we should be considering to do more of as we prepare for change in our teams? So, so that's kind of our time together. It is constant. So why don't we pause and harness it? So if there's wind, we're harnessing wind in our organizations. Why are we not using this one thing that can constantly catch us up? And instead of it catching us up, let's make it work for us. So if it's done right, research says we can actually enhance productivity by 20% and employee engagement by 10%. So what are those things that we could be doing differently? Just to give you a little bit of a sense of the rate of change, I thought a fun thing for a Friday morning, music. How has music changed just over the last 100 years? And, something that we've totally forgotten about, but they used to be spreading music around with music sheets. It was sheet music. You'd get your piano sheet music, and that's how you would learn the song of the day. And that through the years has just actually scaled down, and for the pace of change has just moved so quickly. It moved from radio, which made it more accessible to the majority of people. You wouldn't need to have a piano, wouldn't need to know how to play music to actually have music. We're in the 50s and the 80s. It went from vinyl to cassettes to CDs. I'm sure there's a memory picture of yourself and your parents going, oh, well, now I've just had all the vinyls and now I'm needing to move to cassettes. It was the first time we could sit down and record something on the radio ourselves. I'm sure some of you are back in your teenage bedrooms just thinking about that moment. And now it's even easier, digital downloads and online, and hey, Bob, it's actually streaming. But that's 100 years and how quickly it was. The Industrial Revolution happened and we got the data revolution. But right now on our doorstep is more like an AI experience. A lot of people are fearful over it. There was 100 years of change over sheet music to streaming. With AI, it was born in 1950, 56, the first time they started talking about artificial intelligence. In 1997, first AI actually beat our world best chess player, and Deep Blue beats us. And then, okay, well, what now? And so now it actually gets to the point where it's free for us, and people are going, well, if you're not moving with the rate of change, it might take your job. Now, look, that's far-fetched. I know each of us are trying to stay with our own approaches, but the main thing is there are things happening outside our organizations and inside our organizations that we need to manage and work with, that it actually makes our investment gains work. And right here in Ireland, we've just experienced a new government being appointed on the 23rd of January. They're looking at environmental elements. We are knowing that we don't live in a glass ball. There are regional and geopolitical things happening that is directly impacting us. Our government is going into protectional trade mode, where we are protecting our industries and our businesses. We know that GDPR is growing. We're looking at inflation and housing. GDPR and AI regulations are being sharpened and stepped up so that it can protect us. And we are also making sure that we keep keeping pace with the UN and EU. So there's lots happening just in our back door from a political, economic, social environment for our organizations. And again, that's happening outside our front door, and that impacts the way that our leaders have to show up, our own responses to that from a strategic leadership and a cultural perspective. How do we show up when these things are happening in our organizations? Are we clear around what our stance are around it? Does it mean that our own practices, our structures, the way that we do processes and procedures, does that change? Or does it impact our individuals? Like, do we need new skill sets to actually go to market differently? Does my tasks change? What's happening? So there's the rate of change in our organizations and outside our organizations is just manic. But the thing is it doesn't have to happen to us. We can make sure that our people, the people side of change, is ready for it. If we are ready for change, we can make sure that we are mitigating disruptions the way things used to be. We can unlock potential. We can actually enhance satisfaction, be talking about things a little bit differently, and we can drive growth. Now, I'm going to look at the key aspects that we can actually manage alongside each other. And before I do that, I just wanted to ask you what's happening in your world when we look at change in our world. So I'm going to ask you to participate in a poll for us. And the first one is, as an organization, are you planning change? Are you experiencing change? Or are you on the other side of change? Where are you today when you're participating in this webinar today? I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds to complete that, and then we're going to go, we're planning, we're experiencing, or we're actually on the other side. What's nice from today's participation is I'm actually sharing that little poll with you. And forgive me, I'm fighting a cold, so if every now and then you hear a little bit of a splutter, please meet me gracefully. It is that weather season. All right, so thank you so much for participating. If we share the results, we're saying 30% of us are actually planning a change, 61% of us are currently experiencing it, and 9% of us are actually on the other side of it. So very interesting to see. If we move on to the next question, the next poll is, if you're planning change, how would others experience it? So you might be from the inside, feel like you knowing what's going on, but how others experience it? Would they say the change is small, it's big enough, all right, or it's huge, it's a little bit uncomfortable? How are they experiencing that? So if you consider that people outside the know, how are they feeling about it? Small, big enough, huge. Yeah, thank you for your participation. So if we close the poll now, we're saying 12% of us saying it's kind of small, 41% are saying it's big enough, and 47% of us saying it's huge, and they're finding it uncomfortable. And lastly, just so we know where you're at, is people experience change in various ways. And when you do it, we undergo change without the necessary supporting it. Where do you guys think you fall? You don't support it, we utilize a plan and changed approach, or we uncertain about how to approach change altogether. How do you guys actually do it? No right or wrong, it's real. It happens everywhere, and that's why we have chats like today. Without the necessary support, with a plan, and you're a little bit uncertain how to go about it. Okay, so if we close the poll now, you guys will see 33% of saying we go without the necessary support. 38% of us are saying we actually have a plan. We've got a plan, we're following it. And 29% of us on the call are saying, well, actually, we're not quite sure how to really position it and how to go through it. So thank you for that insight. It gives us a bit of a view around how you're experiencing change. Again, I want to encourage you as we go through the session today, please pop your questions into the question and answer section. We will have enough time at the end to just go through a couple of questions if you have any for us. Right. So if we're looking at change, there's many reasons why organizations actually go through change. We have external triggers and internal triggers. Sometimes it's about a goal that we have internally. The idea would be, as we go through those changes, to make sure that we bring the most important element along on the journey. And I'm sure you guys are going to understand that. You would agree, it's our people. Our people are the people it make the change come to life. It's who actually brings it to fruition. However, the pace that we put our teams through without giving them the necessary support can create so much chaos for us. It causes anxiety, and it makes them feel uncertain about the contribution that they can make. And 70% of change initiatives actually fail because we don't communicate, or there's not enough strong leadership supporting it. Like, people look to leaders during tough times or uncertain times. And so Tim Creasy, who's the Chief Innovation Officer at ProSci, who specializes in this, saying, we really, really need to get it right, that support to our team members. And what's interesting is there's further statistics saying that people are actually finding change overwhelming. It's not just that they don't know what to do or what to do differently, it's that they feel that it's overwhelming, and it's not based just on generations. They did a cross-generational study, and actually 81% of our younger generation people feel more overwhelmed than ever before with the rate of change that happens in our organizations. So as the previous slide alluded, individuals and employees are actually key to our change. Now, collective change is made up out of one individual making a change, and the next, and the next. And if you're familiar with marginal gains, the one bucket of that one drop of water and the next actually makes a big bucket full of water. That's the concept around change. So organizational change happens when you and I as an individual actually accept the change, embrace the change, and move on. And then I express that to Tim, and Tim comes on the journey, and then Holly comes on the journey. And so to that collective individual groups eventually become the tipping point for the team to change, for the organization to change, the county or the country to change. So depending on where it is, the thing is, we need to find an enabling framework in our businesses that works for you, that will realize the benefits that you intended it to do. How do we bring people on the journey as we go? And it's really remembering that individual creates that energy to change. So a little simple pitch over here is, if I remember the individual in the middle of it all, and we can answer 2 simple questions for them: what's the impact on me? And what's in it for them, the change in it for them, we're starting on that journey with them. That's 2 very simple questions we've got to ask. And we've got to understand the change from their context. What is the thing that is happening in their world that they've got to know and do differently? Now, I mentioned to you the change productivity stat of we can actually bring change around and impact productivity positively by 20% if we do it right. Now, on this visual, you'll see there's a golden thread which says normal productivity looks like good at this level. As we invite people to go through change, you can see productivity can absolutely dip if I'm going through transition as an individual and I don't know how it's going to impact me, or how it will help me do better in my future, or where I'm standing in it, or what skills I might need to do it. So our job with change management in organizations is to look at individuals and ask the question, are they clear about what the impact's going to be on them? And are they equipped and ready? Can they answer the question, why are we changing? How will it impact me? Do I have to do my job differently? And if so, how do I do it differently? Are we equipping them? Are we asking the question, are my outcomes dependent on this individual group of individuals to do something differently, adopt a system or a new way of working? And how are we empowering them to do that? Now, as people move through transition, they actually are saying goodbye to a way of doing things in the past. They might be, if you're moving location, they might be losing out on their favorite cup of coffee or the relationship with a barista that they had cultivated over time. They're saying goodbye to that. So if there's an office move in mind, to think about, how do they actually get to the office? What's the new commuting routes? What are some of the loveliest spots that they can think of that they can go for a walk over lunch, or where they can grab a reasonably affordable meal if they've forgotten a meal? So just to really put yourself in the individual's shoes and kind of go, what's going to be different? And what are the things that I need to think about? If you're in a corporate environment, you're going through a merger and acquisition, their roles might be changing. What good looks like for my career framework might be looking different. What my next rung on the ladder would be different for me. So to really think about, what are they saying goodbye to? What would we have to communicate consistently and clearly for them during this transition period? And how do I communicate future and hope for them? What's going to be different? So as we go through that, understanding that I'm working towards the hearts and minds of individuals across the organization, and they might fall into groups and clusters, and that's really good. And that's why we lean into organizational change, like what you might be familiar with is this huge, lovely model from John Kotter going, I've got to create the case of change. And if you and I have written business cases before, we're very familiar with, what are we changing? Who's going to be the core team to bring it to life? Who we're going to have speak about it? Are we going to make sure that we've got the right group of people to actually talk about what it is that we're going to do? And have we sat down and clarified that? And once we're very clear about why we're changing, what's going to be different, what skill sets are people going to be needing to do differently, we now go into actually going out there, talking about it succinctly. I had a conversation earlier this week with someone and kind of going, we're not quite sure, is there a right time to do this? Do we do this after something's happened or before something's happened? And the truth is, we've got to be sure about what it is that we're doing as quickly as possible with a group of leaders to lead out with that. And as information becomes more clear, we can put that out to the organization. But the soon as we can actually establish somebody who's going to be constantly communicating honestly and clearly with a group of people, that's what you want, so that people have a true North Star throughout this experience. And as you engage and you communicate for buy-in and people start doing things differently, we're empowering action and we celebrate short wins, quick wins, so that we can actually make sure that people can see that we're moving in the right direction. And then that future element, John Kotter says, there's this place of sustaining change. Once we've actually moved into the right direction, why we've done it and the benefits for it, constantly reminding people and rewarding people for stepping up and doing it in the new way. So if it is about moving location and we're in this new spot, people making use of the new environment, the production line going live, people actually celebrating the fact that it used to take us 4 days to do something, it's now 3.5, the benefit value of that, what is it? And actually sharing it out there. If it is about doing sales in a different way, after a merger, well, what does that look like? And the first sale that we win collectively, what is it? Who was involved and celebrated, showing that it's actually working and there's a different change in there. That's kind of just really two examples of bringing them through. But the main thing we need to remember is the core people in the middle, the employees that's bringing it to life. And we've got to ask ourselves consistently 3 things around each individual. What do we want them to think? What do we need them to do? And how do we want them to feel? And if we can answer those very 3 simple questions, you quickly are going to see the messaging you want to do. You're going to be clear about the skills and impact that they need to know and have. If it's a piece of technology that needs to be different, what training do we need to do? And that feeling element is about really clearly communicating where people fit in and where their benefits are and how they can actually be a catalyst towards the change. And if we understand how people feel and they're not pro it, we can actually communicate and walk alongside them and help them on their journey as well. Because change does make people feel angry and they experience losses. And how are we going to talk about that? And how do we work with them to actually embrace the new? And so if we are very clear around, as we engage our teams, to make sure we constantly ask ourselves about our employees, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? What do they need to think? What do they need to feel? And how do they need to do something differently? It's really imperative for us. So how do we harness that? If we know that that's the base and the bedrock of our change planning, what are the things that we need to have in mind to make sure that our individual, who then is the catalyst for the team and the organization, embrace the change and all that it is? And here are some simple things that you and I actually have in hand that we just need to sequence and coordinate and have the right people involved in. And the first thing is exactly what you've heard me say, is communicating consistently. Have a plan. Make sure that we know what good looks like at what stage. If we're sure that if it is an office move, what, when, how, and what does it look like? If we're talking massive merger and acquisition, what does good look like? Who would be the people involved? How do we talk to the staff? What are some of the key messagings and the purpose for it? Who's going to be the core leadership around it? And leadership is a strong word for everybody who can positively influence it. So John Kotter makes use of a guiding coalition, or you might have heard change champions. Now, those people need to be from every rung in the organization: senior leaders, line managers, influencers. If you think about where people have coffee or the water cooler, who are the people who lead out on that? That's your leadership group that you need to work with. And then constantly wins. If there's something that you can share about where you've succeeded or where you've worked together, and it's actually translate it into the intended win to talk about it. But those 4 elements, simplistic put, is what we need to make sure people understand at an individual level constantly throughout a change program. Now, as you look at change, I've used 2 examples through our conversation today. The size and the effort is quite different and significant depending on the difference you want to create. So if it's an individual change, the effort that you put into the things on the left is a little bit less. However, you still need those core elements in there. So you do need to be able to articulate why you are doing it, the communication around it. So be clear about what it is that you're wanting to talk about and what it is that you're changing, but why it's important to do the individual, and how they will be impacted by it, and how they can bring their best self to it, and what they can gain from it. When we talk about knowledge and ability, is if I had to use the example of bringing a new system into place, I've never seen it before. I think specifically, perhaps you are looking at AI right now. What does it mean? What is the benefit for it? You know, is there some scary factors around it? If you don't have a learning module internally and it's not safe and secure, we definitely need to make sure that our team know about the dangers of it, the benefits of it if they are going to use it, and what they should be doing and should not be doing. But that knowledge and ability is something that we really have to make sure that we're supporting our staff through the change that we're bringing them on. The alignment and commitment through incentives. Managers say when they are involved in change, they feel like they don't have the right supports. And sometimes that goes through incentives, and other times it's about the training that people need, or they don't have a communication plan. But they actually put a value of like 65% of managers feel that they're ill-equipped during change. And so if we can just think of it from a core group of people who are concerned about change and do see that there is a sequence of events that we can put together that makes it a lot more amicable for people, and that we can actually protect the productivity and success of our organization when we think these things through, that incentive element and commitment is bought quicker because it's seen that it's not haphazard. Now, I know some of us were answering, well, we actually don't have a plan through the change. And I think we said about 33% of us were saying, actually, we are going through change, but we don't have a plan. And maybe this is something you could take and look at that. The necessary resources are really important, and an action plan around when are you going to be doing what is really, really key. So that graded green, as I said, the size of your change means the depth of your efforts on your left-hand side goes up. But key to it is we do need a plan. We have to be sure what we're going to communicate. What are the skills elements that we need to look after? What do people need to know differently? If they are going to be having to adopt something, utilize something different, what are we doing to actually bring that to life for them? Are we putting supports in place around it? And how will you drive adoption and usage? So if we are making all the effort and we're putting it out there, what are the things that we're doing to actually make sure Amanda can make use of that piece of technology we've just put out there? We might have spent quite a lot of money to change things around, but if we're not upskilling people to make the use of it in the best way possible, that might be a waste of our time. So if we're looking at the skills, what we've done is just put together a very rudimentary planner. So if you think about taking, a strategy always feels a lot more manageable if you can put it down on a page. So how do you put it down on a page? And so if you can take whatever change it is and actually put it into one sentence, typically they say if we can get it right in 6 to 9 words, you know you're doing well. What's the change that you're doing? And what does it look like when it's different? If you can fill that in and say the change vision is, what is it? Can you articulate it? And when you then ask the question, why are we doing it? We don't move location for nothing. Mergers and acquisitions is always a great opportunity for new lifeblood or a new generation of successes for our organization. What is it? Why are we doing it? We're going to who will be impacted by the change? What's their reaction to it? And yeah, is one of the bigger opportunities for organizations. You might know what is going to happen to people, but do we pause and ask the question, how might they respond to it? And once we've asked that question, do we have a number of activities or thoughts or plans supporting that response? Sometimes responses are positive and sometimes they are negative, and we call that resistance. They don't really want to do it. So if there is going to be resistance, what are some of the things that we can counterweight it with? Is there an incentive? Is there a new lobby or a new environment in the new location that people can find more relaxing? Is that something we want to put out there? What will the change impact? What does the ideal future look like? So people understand when this is over, this is what we would have gained. And then to maybe just drop down a list of things that will need to take place to make the change occur. And then to support that through communication. So as you are very clear about why you're doing it, have comms that have a sentence or two around what does that look like? Who will be involved? So if that looks different for each of the people that are going to be involved, what is it that I need to communicate to them? And then you've got key milestones. So in this one pager, you can quickly see how large or how small the change is for you. And it reminds you of some of the things that you might be needing to do, and then for you to actually action it. So when you move from a one-page document, you might actually understand that there's a threat here for people. And I might actually need to have an outline around how big is this change? So when we are looking at far more of a complex change in an organizational level, we're wanting to look at assess the change, like from a skills in a departmental area. One skill might change very little, but in another environment, it might be lots. If we're looking at changing a production line, the machinery that we use might not be as complex as before. So now the skills that my fitters and turners had needs to change slightly. It will be less hands-on. So how do I make sure that they are capable of using the new electronics? And how do we make use of these skill sets, maybe from a process flow and process improvement perspective? So we look at the impact analysis. We're looking at the attributes of the organization that might be required to change, to enhance the change. So if I come from an organization that is slow in decision-making and we are very collaborative in style, and we potentially are merging with people that are fast-paced, make quick decisions, and not collaborative, you can immediately sense the tension there. So the skill set in the organization that moves fast versus slow needs to be tempered. That means the change will need a lot more consistent alignment at a very senior level. And then I have to make sure that those seniors talk a lot more frequently and actually communicate out so that people are on the same page as we move forward. The resistance management plan, these training needs. If I have a myriad of people involved, we need to probably look at something like a sponsor plan and stakeholder analysis. So from a very simple plan where we go, well, how are people going to respond? We might have 10 different responses from one group in one department, and we might need to look at how do we work through that. So sometimes it can move away from it's just a communication that you release to group work where you work together, work through the change. I help them understand what the differences are that they're going to be experiencing and equipping them specifically. So you might be growing from one email to 10 group works and how you're going to really support them through that change curve that they dip through. And you can see there's a number of elements that you could do. There is key messaging, feedback templates, actually having the core group get together and actually telling you how it's going. There's a number of things that we could do. But again, if we are sure about what it is that we want to do with the communication that we want to put out, the skills that they know they're going to need, and how we can provide that upfront, making sure we've got the right resources, the money to put behind the training efforts, making sure that people have the time available. It's not just always a lunch and learn. I know some of you might be thinking about food as part of a nice environment, bringing people in and calming them. Just being sure that leadership shows up in the conversation and making sure that they can look towards leaders that walk the talk, that are living it and bringing it to life. Those are your main elements that you want to do. Now, I was thinking how we make this practical for you is to really share a lovely model. This is a model from ProSci. I love it because it's simple. If you could just see these 5 elements here, and we 5 digits that we can help us remember a change. So depending on the size of the change, obviously the depth of the effort will change, like I said before. But if you just think about change and you kind of go, well, do people know about it? Are they aware? Is my first thing. Do they know that we need to change and why we're doing it? Do they have the necessary desire? So in our communications, are we leading out with, wow, guys, this is what the benefits are going to be for us. This is what's in it for you, how it will impact you positively. And the challenge might be here for us, but we thought about that and here it is. Making sure that people have the necessary knowledge to make the decision around the change. So if it is about location change, showing them the differences that it will make for them. If it is about where they're going to be parking, where it is that they're going to potentially find lunch, that it might be just for a short term that we might be in a different location. If it's for a long term, what is the benefits for them? What is the change that it is? So they know how they're going to change, the ability, implement the skills and behaviors that they need to do. If I am in sales and I am moving from a fast-paced sales environment to a slower paced, what's the benefit for us? Does it mean that we're going to be able to equip ourselves more in different areas around the tools that we are going to be using? What is it? So from a change perspective, there's always a benefit for us to uncover and communicate. And lastly, resistance, our number 5, is really to reinforce why we've made the change. So change, people slip forward and backwards through that transitional loop. It isn't a constant. If Amanda's made her mind up, that's where she stays. It's a warning that I need to say. People do slip down and up that curve. And that's why we need to be consistent in the way that we communicate and plan. But ADKAR is a lovely, easy way to remember those core things that you need to do. So as I say, we need to have a firm idea of what it is that we want to communicate. But sometimes you're in the corridor and people are asking you questions and you can quickly go, well, do they know what they need to know? Are they aware? Do they have the necessary desire? What are some of the benefits and pluses that I need to be able to say? What are some of the things that they need to know and be able to do? And are they perhaps resistant? So what are some of the things that I need to add in here? So ADKAR is a really lovely way to actually remember some of the things that you and I need to actually communicate with our staff. Now, as you're going through it, you might be going, well, what are some of the skill sets that I need to really get this done? Right. So my skill sets in in change management is communication is key. Rather communicate than not, because if you don't communicate, you're going to potentially sabotage the change. People will make information up in lieu of none. Make sure that you have the right level of empathy. So sometimes it does feel like it's a business transaction. So we are doing this differently, guys. So just know it. Check in. It's a Monday morning email. I'm trusting that you've seen that and we move on. And we've seen change is all about that individual making the connection to what the benefit is for them and to move forward with it. If you haven't done that, maybe to check the level of empathy to see whether you've considered the change and the impact for the individual. Understanding around business processes and the delivery of the changes, the benefits that it can bring. So when you and I understand how business processes work, what it did before, what it's going to do now, and that change and the benefit, that would be really brilliant for your organization. So if you can have somebody in the team that can very easily see the wood for the trees between A and B and help people understand that, that really helps. Leadership abilities is really important in change as well. It's that ability to understand what I say and do in front of others, and when there's no one in the room, actually creates the context for change. And so when you are deciding who's going to be leading out the change and communicating on behalf of the organization or the team, it's really important to understand that they get it and that they're able to actually work through it. Creating a cohesive team and working together is important. Collaboration, knowledge management is actually really important too. And what we mean by that is, in the past we used to, and now we will. And helping people understand that change. We used to save things over here and it looked like that, but now it's over here.
A2, thank you.
So just to work with that. Performance management, understanding what the gains would be from before to now. And the last element is project management. So if you're thinking around when communications need to go out, by how do I impact that group, you can see that there's a little bit of delineation of activities and understanding, grouping and clustering that, so that whole project management skill set helps in change management quite significantly. Now, as we started out, I said we really wanted to make it practical, and we've given you a couple of models that would remind you of the things that you've seen in the past. So let's ask a couple of questions of ourselves. Is why are we, for instance, going through the change? So a lot of us are saying we're planning change or you're experiencing it. And to make it simple, you've got to answer these questions for yourselves and your peers around you in the organization. If you are changing, why are you changing? What needs to change? And what does it impact? And who can lead it and support it? How does it impact everybody? It helps when the people who lead out on it are people that are affected by it as well. And to be clear about what your immediate next step is. Often when we do change, we might do this once over and then we think, okay, that's great, we've done it. And that's where I want to encourage you, is that change, like Houtika says, he says it's constant, right? It's the only constant we have. And so once you've gone through this once, it means that you start again. And once you've communicated with a team, is to understand that you've just left them off somewhere. You've got to pick up at that point and take them to the next level and to the next time, and celebrate the wins and remind them about what's good. And then it becomes part of your culture. And so it becomes a way of being. And so slowly but surely you can see it. It starts with a little bit of effort and it goes faster and faster. And eventually you'll have this flywheel of change in an organization where you're constantly thinking about how what we are doing is impacting our employees, and how do we make it easier for them so that they feel positive about the business, that they have the skills to do what they need to do, and that we're influencing them in the way that they actually want to stay. So that process or business, wherever you are, you might be at a different phase to your peer group. And just to understand that your maturity model will impact what you're able to bring to life and to do in the organization. So reminder, if you start without a plan, you're going to create some confusion. You might be going, okay, well, we're actually going to be doing this, or the vision was that, so a plan makes sure that there is no confusion. If you communicate often, frequently, bite size, you're making sure that you're not sabotaging your own initiatives. If you make change happen and you don't give people the skills and the knowledge and the ability to do what they're doing, you're creating anxiety. If you don't have the resources, there's frustration. And if you change without a plan, and this is the caution, there'll be false starts and you'll actually create fatigue. People will be going, okay, but we did that last time and here we are this time. You know, it's like, can we have a plan here? Just be mindful that if you do it in a haphazard way, that you're actually going to create some anxieties and not create the drive and the growth that the whole change might have been intended to do. And you might be creating some fails for yourself. Now, we did say we're going to give you an opportunity to ask some questions. So I wonder, Annie, if I might ask you to lead us in that.
Certainly, Amanda. Thank you for that. That was really interesting. I think there's probably a lot of homework. Certainly for myself, I took a lot from that, and perhaps people have a lot of actions from that. The one question I was thinking of myself there, obviously, it's obvious as you said it, but the people bit, the communication piece, and then you alluded to the younger generation feeling overwhelmed. And I suppose there's so much talk and conversation. I know we've ran a few sessions over the last couple of years around the intergenerational workforce and managing that. And I suppose, do you have any data or do you have any suggestions about how you might manage communication to maybe the different generations within your workforce? So like millennials versus Gen Z, etc. For a large organization, or can it be broken down like that? Have you any stats or insights as to how that would be managed?
Yeah, so the statistics said actually overall, 71% of people feeling that communication and management of change doesn't go well in an organization. So that was it. Out of that 71, they said 81% of the younger generation feel particularly overwhelmed. And that's the generational insight I have there. But the reality is, as you break down people into generations, more importantly in change, we should break down how the change impacts the different groupings in our organization and communicate to them according to what the change will do for them. And our generations will be dispersed regardless, the generational element will fizzle out. I think another point about communication to bring up and remind ourselves is little and often. So if we could say a little, like if you think about bite-sized learning, it's because that's what we can manage. And I think that's what the generational feedback is also saying to us is if you can give me a lot of, if you overwhelm me with information, it's too much. But if you give me what I need at the right time to put it out there. Another caution around communication is not to give people too much. Actually make it available on a portal somewhere inside your organization. Put it out there, make it available. And if Amanda needs to know or wants to know more, I can go navigate and find it rather than not communicate and scare people. So little, often, and constantly would be my response there.
No, that makes loads of sense when you outline it like that. Yeah, absolutely, very helpful. We didn't discuss beforehand. Are you planning to can we share the slides, Amanda? That might be something people would welcome, or are you happy to do that? Or the template and the various templates you share there might be useful for people.
Very comfortable. Yeah, I think I really do hope people find it helpful. I think that effort element, obviously, if it's a small change, you won't go into such big details. But if it's a bigger organizational change, to really just consider your groupings, your responses, your planning around that. And if anybody on the call would like some support around that, please do reach out to us. We're passionate about helping people on this journey so that they feel confident and make progress for your organization.
Brilliant. No, thank you for that. As I say, I think we've had a great attendance this morning. I see there's a lot of actions to be taken, Amanda. So look, if there's no more questions, we might take our 10 minutes back for everybody this morning. Thanks again, Amanda. That was a really, really super presentation. I'm really keen to move forward with that and utilize some of that myself in my own role. So look, thanks again. Again, people can reach out to Amanda directly via Cork Chamber. We will share the slides. And there's keep an eye out for further sessions in the months ahead. So look, just to wish everyone a nice weekend. The sun is shining out there. And we'll see you all soon. Super. Thanks so much, Amanda, and we'll see you all again soon. Take care. Bye bye now.
Go well. Bye everyone.